decades the most popular poet in America. He was a remarkable image of a poet, the good gray poet, long white beard, and very erudite, very cultured, and kind of a retiring, gentlemanly air. As a member of the Fireside Poet, he was one of the more notable of them, and he had a prominence there. He was a very prolific poet, and he was able to retire from teaching. He taught languages at Harvard for a few years there, and he was able to, after not too long, I think like 15 years or so, he was able to retire and just devote himself to writing because his work sold so well and was branded within that fireside poet tradition. He was able to make a nice living off that and funded some excursions overseas. He very famously went to Italy, where he mastered the Italian language enough so that he could translate Dante very famously, and remarkable man. And if you look at his poetry, you can see why he was so popular, for good and for ill. But also you can see a real talent going on there as he's exploring different ideas, even within the very conventional style of what he was trying to do. One of his first big hits as a poet was called A Psalm of Life. It comes out when he was a very young man still. And it's a remarkable exploration of his own thoughts, but it also sets up a nice standard of poetry that he can progress from there, because he had such a long life, quite frankly, and a long career. And so Psalm of Life is published, I think, in like 1838, yes. And it was a immediate smash, and it has a lot of signature elements within it that he's going to be playing with really for the rest of his life. Psalm of Life. What the heart of the young man said to the psalmist. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not of sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act, that each tomorrow find us farther than today. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still, like muffled drums, are beating funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant, let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within and God overhead. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother seeing shall take heart again. Let us, then, be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. Which is interesting. The idea of life having a kind of divine purpose, or life having a definite end, the soul being immortal, all of this fairly conventional Christian doctrine, fairly conventional American belief. The idea of the positivist strain of American character. The idea that, no, you can't just sit around moping saying, oh, there's no point to anything. You got to get up and do stuff. You have to be active. And you can feel that element, which is very much in the Fireside Poets tradition, that element of positivist thinking, of active life, the outdoors, the sense of being productive in life. All of this very conventional, very moralistic, very didactic, as the as though the as his poetry and the firesides tended to be. The positivism, but to act that each tomorrow shall find us further than today. Yeah, okay, fine. It's a little gee, that should be embroidered on a pillow. And in the number of exclamation points are a little overwhelming at times. Be not like dumb driven cattle, be like a hero in the strife. Trust no future, however pleasant, let the dead past bury it dead. Act in the living present, heart within and God overhead. Very didactic, very moralistic, very emphatic, very passionate, very romantic, but very stern almost in its hectoring of anybody who might be having some doubts and insecurities, which in itself you can say, well, all right, maybe there's a little irony going on there. This is supposed to be sounding a little hollow to somebody who is having real doubts about the what happens after death, what happens to one's soul, what is the meaning of life after all, is there a purpose after all, and all those questions swirling around when somebody starts in with all these jingoistic little rhymes, this very regular rhyme and meter dog trot stuff. It can sound a little trite. I don't think he's going for irony. I'm going to assume that he's being 100% sincere in this moment, for better or for worse. But there is that opportunity there. And that last line, I think, maybe could be seen as hinting at that. Let us then be up and doing with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. Now, on the one level, you could say that, well, to wait, your reward will be in heaven. That is, I think that is a clear plain text reading here. But waiting it sounds ambivalent to me, or not ambivalent, but ambiguous, because waiting is just a sense of being unfulfilled, a sense of being uncertain, perhaps, of waiting for something to happen, almost as if you're not sure it's going to happen. I think this is a counter reading more than a reading. I think the plain text reading is still the primary one we have to go with here, but there is the possibility of this other layer in here that we could be maybe gliding past a little too often. And that itself is curious. Also curious within this very pious poem is an affirmative embrace of the now, of the world, the worldly existence. It is a psalm of life, after all, a song of praise of life itself, presumably life on earth. Also, obviously, to a degree, life after Earth, but it seems a little torn on this question. Lives of great men all remind us that we can make our lives sublime and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints on the sands of time. I don't know if he was the first one to use that line. It sounds kind of cringy to me now, especially in that rhyme. But okay, fine. But that is a belief in a human being walking on sand and other human beings. The brother who comes at the shipwreck's brother seeing shall take heart again, who comes and sees that and takes inspiration from it, which is inspiration by humanity. He's not seeing God necessarily in that moment. He is seeing the evidence of other humanity, which is an oddly humanist take on this. So I think there's a little ambiguity going on here. Perhaps that heroic nature of the character, striving ahead to be great, to do all these great things, to leave your mark in the footprints on the sands of time, in a very positivistic, active way. It is a celebration of the human being. It is also, I would say, an aspirational call to the heroic nature within all of us, perhaps. It does sound in very many ways like Tennyson's Ulysses, which is composed at roughly this same time. Well, there was a gap between composition and publication, but this was right in there in that pocket. Maybe, maybe Longfellow got an advanced copy. I don't know. I kind of doubt it. But the sentiment, I think, is significant in the way that it's expressing a similar urging on in that martial tone almost. It reflects martial values very explicitly, but in a kind of forward leaning, macho almost, go out there, onward Christian soldier way. And that's a really interesting take for some of the for his early work, for the work of a young man. Notably, I would say this is a very regular rhyme scheme, very regular meter. Not long, like Hiawatha long, but not short either. As some of his poems will get progressively shorter as his career goes on, perhaps again in deference to the saleability, the commercial viability of relatively short lyrics for memorization, the schoolroom poet model as well. And we can see that more in the poems of the end of his life, where they all tend to fit within relatively easy memorization length. And one of the more interesting, one of the more notable ones written towards the end of his life is the tide rises, the tide falls. Again, this sense of nature and the acts of God working through nature, but an interesting perspective on humanity within time on Earth. The tide rises, the tide falls, the twilight darkens, the curlew calls. Along the sea sands, damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town, and the tide rises, the tide falls. Darkness settles on roofs and walls, but the sea in the darkness calls. The little waves with their soft white hands efface the footprints in the sands, and the tide rises, the tide falls. The morning breaks, the steeds in their stalls stomp and neigh as the hostler calls. The day returns, but nevermore returns the traveler to the shore, and the tide rises, the tide falls. Obviously mimicking the coming in of the tide, the flood tide and the receding tide, the ebbing and the flowing. That's a fairly obvious metaphor going on here for the natural cycles of nature in a kind of sublime effacement of human culture. The traveler hastens toward the town as he seems like fearful at that moment of being out there exposed on the beach. He hastens towards the town. The sun is setting. It's getting dark out. Perhaps he is afraid. He's a traveler. He's not. He doesn't have home, so he's going to go and get someplace to stay for the night. Later on, the tide comes in and effaces the footprints in the sand. So that one traveler has been walking along the beach. Now his footprints, the footprints in the sands of time, perhaps, have been effaced, have been erased, have been washed over, and evidence of him is gone. And the next stanza, the next day, supposedly, the day returns, but nevermore returns the traveler to the shore. So he is gone forever. Physically, as a traveler going through town, or as a human being walking on Earth and gone to another shore, let's say. And all of this is part of the natural cycle. All of this is going on. And that is a very entertaining and interesting, I would say, also lyric. I like the repetition going on there. The tide rises, the tide falls. Obviously, the twilight darkens, the curlew calls. The regular rhyme scheme is it's cyclical as well. Darkness settles on roofs and walls, but the sea to the darkness calls. The sea, the sea. Again, a little mini repetition within a single line. And the little waves with their soft white hands efface the footprints on the sands, and the tide rises, the tide falls. You get this sense of the inevitability. That line comes back, and it's so conspicuous in this slightly different rhythm, slightly different meter, slightly different tone than the rest of it. So those little end stop lines are very rigid, I would say. And yet you do get some variation within that. Because look at that line, but the sea with the darkness calls, the little waves with their soft white hands efface the footprints on the sands. With their little white hands efface, that's not exactly a full unit of sense until you get to the second line. So there's a little bit of, I'm not going to say it's enjambment, but there's a little bit of a elbow room to those lines that extends beyond the simple, neat couplet form. And the structure itself, it is very easy to memorize. It's very regular, and you could stand up in front of a little one-room schoolhouse and recite the bejesus out of this thing for a little extra credit. But it also gives a homey, soothing, meditative flow to the poem and to your understanding of life. And you can see Longfellow at the end of a long life at this point, getting into the rhythm of life, getting into the falling of the sea. It comes in, it goes out. It comes in, it goes out. At the beginning of his career, he was coming in. At the end of his career, it is going out. And this rhythm, I think, is evident in what he is doing, because this one little lyric is a little creepier, quite honestly, than just about any of his other work. This one little lyric, I think, is hinting at him, his mortality, his sense of impending death, his sense that, okay, it's about my time. And that makes his career a kind of rounded, well structured line of its own, which has a beginning and an ending, which has neat hospital corners, which has all of that aesthetic structure that pervades his work and pervades the work of most of his contemporaries and colleagues. The sense of an orderly, logical, not understandable, but divinely controlled life. God is overhead, and he watches over all of us. And we can have faith in that, we can take solace in that, and we should abide by that.